Hello everyone, I am Kisha Halina and I'm going to discuss the 8th topic under the principle of literary criticism on looking at a picture. Modified to represent what happens when we look at a picture, a statue or building, or listen to a piece of music. So what does it mean to look at something? So looking at something shows an interest in it, right? So whether it is a painting, a table, or a person. So when you look at something, then others who look at your eyes will feel compelled to follow your gaze to see what you are looking at. This is a remarkable skill as we are able to follow gaze very accurately. The importance to the whole response of different kinds of elements varies enormously from art to art. Persons interested primarily in one arts of the arts that the others or some of them are entirely different in nature. So again, why do people react differently when they view art? So brain regions involved in the experience of emotion and goal setting show activation when viewing art. So evolutionary ancestry has hardwired humans to have affective responses for certain patterns and traits. So these predispositions lend themselves to responses when looking at a certain visual arts as well. The place of representation in painting, like for example, is greatly elucidated by a sound comprehension of the place of reference or thought in poetry. So thus, painters often aver that poetry is so different, so indirect, so secondhand in a way in which it produces its results as hardly to deserve the name of an art at all. But, as we shall see, the differences between separate arts are sometimes no greater than differences to be found in each of them, and close analogies can be discovered by careful analysis between all of them. So these analogies indeed are among the most interesting features which such scrutiny as we are here attempting can make clear. For an understanding of the problems of one art is often of great service in avoiding misconceptions in another. So we must be careful, of course, not to compare the wrong features of two arts and not to find merely fanciful or insecurely grounded analogies. So the eye. So our eye, as well known, is peculiar among our sense organs in that the receptor, the retina, is a part of the brain. So instead of being a separate thing connected with the brain more or less remotely by a peripheral nerve. So the eyes are often called, with some justification, the windows of the soul, as they can send many different nonverbal signals. For reading body language, it is quite useful as looking at people's eyes are normal part of communication. Eye contact between two people is a powerful act of communication that may show interest, affection, and dominance. So, moreover, there are certain connections leading from one another part of the brain outwards to the retina, as well as connection leading inwards. So, thus, there is some ground for supposing that through these outgoing connections, actual retinal effects may accompany some visual images, which would thereby become much more like actual sensations than is the case with the other senses. However, this may be the process whereby an impression which is interpreted in one way. Like for example, a person measuring the pigmented areas of a canvas is correctly counted as a sign of flat-colored surface, becomes when differently interpreted an intricately divided three-dimensional space. This process is one of the intervention of images of several kinds. Following upon the visual images are sworn of others varying from picture to picture. Tactile images giving the appearance of texture to surfaces, muscular images giving hardness, stiffness, softness, flexibility, and so on to the volumes imagined, the lightness and insubstantiality of muslin, the solidity and fixity of rock being matters of the intervention of images due originally to the sensations we have received in the past from these materials. So this muscular imagery is of course called up in differing ways in different cases. Primarily, it is due to the imitation by the artist of subtleties in the light given off by the materials or characteristics, peculiarities in their form, but there are, as we shall see, more indirect but also less stable, less reliable, and less efficacious which ways by which they may be evoked. So the same applies to the other images, thermal, olfactory, auditory, and the rest, which may be involved in particular cases. So what does it mean to be visually literate? So visually literate people can read the intended meaning in the visual text such as the advertisement or film shot, an intended meaning and evaluate the form, structure, and features of the text. So they can also use images in a creative and appropriate ways to express its meaning. So colors as signs, that is to say, even at the most optical and least elaborated stage, have certain very marked spatial characters of their own. Red, like for example, seems to advance towards the eye and to swell out of its boundaries, while blue seems to retreat and to withdraw into itself. So the fact that roses, sunsets, and so forth are so often found to present harmonious combination of color may appear a little puzzling by this account, but the vast range of close gradation which a rose petal, for example, presents supplies the explanation. Out of all this, the eye picks that gradation which best accords with other colors chosen. So the degree of saturation may also give recession in obvious and in more recondite ways. Pure colors in foreground and gray colors in the background are simple example. So similarly, opposition of colors is one of the main means by which the stresses and strains of volumes may be suggestion. So it explains the fact that we see different colors, from instance when gloomy and when gray, and thus how the actual selection made by the artist may reveal the kind and direction that impulses which are active at him at the moment of selection. So colors, in fact, have harmonious relations through the physical laws governing these relations are at present unknown, and the relations themselves only imperfectly ascertained. For every color, another can be found such that the combined response to the two will be a recognizable kind, whose peculiarities are due to probably to the compatibility with one another of the impulses set up by each. Colors is of course primarily the cause and controlling factor of emotional response to painting, but as we have said, it may and commonly does help to determine form. So this is extreme instant, but the influence of color upon form through the emotional relations of colors to one another is all pervading. Sometimes color strengthens and solidifies the structure. Sometimes it fights against it. Sometimes it turns into a commentary, as it were, the color response modifying the form response and vice versa. For too many people do look at pictures primarily with intent to discover what they are of, what they represent, without allowing the most important thing in the picture, its sensory stimulation through color and form to take effect. So indeed, it is equally certain that there are great pictures in which the contribution to the whole response made through representation is not less than the made more directly through form and color. So the fundamental features of the experiences of reading poetry and of appreciating pictures, the features upon which their value depends, are alike. So the means by which they are brought about are unlike, but closely analogous critical and technical problems arise, as we have seen for each. So lastly, criticism helps us to give us new perspective and opens our eyes to things we may have overlooked or never considered, such as in picture, colors, poetry, or in any form of art.